Alright, so today we're going to be ranking the 2024 Oscar Best Picture nominees, and this is actually the 1 year anniversary basically to the channel because the first video I did was the 2023 Best Pictures. So this year I wanted to make it kind of a tradition for the channel. I'm going to include some of my 2024 snubs. These are movies that weren't nominated for Best Picture but were some of my favorites from last year. But anyways, let's get into the video. But before we get into ranking the Oscars, I wanted to talk about a recent milestone that we achieved for the channel, and it's that we just passed 100 subscribers. I'm very grateful for it. Couldn't be done without any of you guys watching. I started the channel basically with the Oscars video from last year, so even just 100 subscriber growth between last year and now is just really validating and encourages me to keep making more videos. My goal this year is to really make more videos and express myself more creatively. Really excited to keep growing as a channel. One goal of mine that I've been telling my friends as a joke, but it's kind of serious. I want to be successful enough to get sponsorship money from like just a really funny, like a meme kind of thing, you know, like Raid Shadow Legends or, you know, ExpressVPN, you know, something that is a staple in every successful YouTuber's career. So once I get to make one of those videos, that's how you know I made it. So the first sponsor video, you know, who wants to sponsor me first? I'm really grateful for you guys. Thank you so much for the support. You know, keep sharing. Yeah, and enjoy the video. Number 10, Maestro. So yeah, Maestro was a really big swing, and it was mostly a miss for me. Before we get started, I want to talk about Bradley Cooper and all the hate that he's been getting recently. I don't think he deserves all this hate for making a movie, man. Like, he's passionate. Let this man be passionate about something he made. He's talking to his, like, heroes. Honestly, I get it, Bradley, if you're listening. But let's start with what I liked. And that was obviously the score. I thought that the use of Leonard Bernstein's music was so smartly thought of as a way to look at the world through his eyes. And I really like that little attention to detail that he put into it. For very specific shots, I really enjoyed the cinematography, but on one in particular where Leonard Bernstein's conducting and his shadow is casting onto the behind the scenes curtain, and it engulfs his wife, played by Carey Mulligan, and I just really love that you can see the themes of the movie just through the cinematography. At the movie's best, it's with the scenes between Felicia and Lenny. That's basically where the story is. They get to have a lot of back and forths and arguments during the movie. At first, the way that they talk to each other, you know, it's cute and hopeful as all budding romances are, but eventually we jump time and we see that their dynamics shift, and that is what I really wanted more out of the film. But I think this is a good time to jump into what I didn't like about the movie. The time jumps across Leonard Bernstein's career are not just jarring, but at times incoherent. I understand that you have a lifetime to explore, but I feel like the film just didn't explore the life of Bernstein and kind of feels like it's barely scratching the surface of someone who seems to be a very important figure in music and history, but the movie doesn't really portray him as that. For example, I'm someone who only knows him because he made the music for West Side Story, but I think for a lot of people that wouldn't know who Leonard Bernstein was and they're trying to watch this movie on Netflix, it's just, I don't think the movie shows enough of Leonard Bernstein's greatness. And the movie feels so Oscar baity, and that at some point it just felt like they were just checking boxes of what needs to be in a biopic. And finally, did anyone else feel like the ending was underwhelming and kind of abrupt? Like, when the movie ended and it kind of just cut to the credits, I didn't feel like I learned anything about the guy. I don't know. It might just be me. But yeah, Maestro is my number 10. Number 9, Anatomy of a Fall. Anatomy of a Fall was seemingly a very straightforward court procedural, but where a film in this genre usually sensationalizes the drama of what could have happened, this instead leaves the gaps to be filled in by the viewer. And depending where the viewer aligns or chooses to put the puzzle pieces together, it is still unclear. Even the film talks about the possibilities of two outcomes, and they really lean into that aspect of it and tries to keep you guessing the entire time. But I felt like the film was pretty predictable, and although it acknowledges the underwhelming ending, and found myself saying, oh, that's it? I feel like I've seen more intense court dramas, and this didn't leave me asking any questions or being invested in the outcome at all. Honestly, my biggest takeaways for the movie was that there's some really good dog acting. That was a cute ass dog. And I'm about to be blasting the PIMP instrumental because I'm deeply misogynist. Number 8, Barbie. I had a lot of fun with Barbie, but I think it's been subject to too much hate since it's come out. And if you ask me, that's because it's giving the most general explanation of a very deep and complicated message about feminism, and of course they are. At the end of the day, I don't think people should be using a movie about toys and what is obviously a satire to preach about their worldviews and why this movie is a part of the problem. I think people should just enjoy the absurdity and really try to understand what questions the movie's trying to provoke. However, a lot of the Barbie movie is undermining its core message. The things I liked about this movie was definitely the production design, specifically in Barbie Land, and everything that went into making that world, because it's very playful and fun, and all of the costumes, learning that they're based off of real Barbie costumes was really interesting. Just the attention to detail of every little plastic toy that's been upscaled to be used as a prop. It's just really cool to see. But in general, it feels like that within the movie that we got was a sharper and more objective script, something that leaned into the aspects that I really like, which is like the satirical elements of the story. Many moments that seemed really fun and do lean into the social commentary mainly took place in Barbie Land, and once we enter the real world, it is almost night and day in quality. I mean, maybe it's to show that the real world is bland and lacking creativity, but when you literally insert a car commercial in the movie, you know that there's been tampering with what the artist's original intent was. So I'm starting it now. I'm starting the campaign right now. Hashtag release the Gerwig cut. You guys got to join in on me. I'm also not over Margot Robbie getting completely snubbed. I mean, it's one of the top grossing films of 2023, and your lead star and producer doesn't even get acknowledged for her role in the movie. Insane. Number 7, American Fiction. Now, American Fiction is a movie that I have some mixed emotions on. On one hand, I really love the satirical and almost surreal premise of the story, and I thought that the pretending to be somebody that you're not aspect would play a larger or more comedic role, but instead we got a character study about a pretentious writer and how his relationship with his family affected who he is as a character when we first get introduced to him. So I really think that the movie's like split in between what the premise is and the deeper story that Cord Jefferson is trying to pick at. I thought everyone involved in this did an amazing job, but I don't think that the direction the story went, especially with the emphasis on his family, balanced with what the movie was advertising itself as. But overall, this movie is just really well made, and everyone involved did an amazing job. It's extremely smart and witty, and that's from the great writing and direction from Cord Jefferson, as well as the entire cast from Jeffrey Wright, who I'm very excited that he's getting these bigger roles. I remember he was the guy from Hunger Games 2. It's really cool to see where he's at now. Sterling K. Brown and Issa Rae and the rest of the supporting cast. So overall, I think this one is really solid, and I'm glad that it's getting the recognition it deserves. Number 6, The Zone of Interest. After watching The Zone of Interest, it's one of the more moving and thought-provoking films I've seen out of this bunch, and probably this year. We follow a seemingly average family trying to live out their dream lives, and it just so happens that their father is a Nazi SS, and on the other side of the garden wall is Auschwitz. So the entire film just uses the juxtaposition of the family's seemingly perfect living and the terrible acts happening just on the other side of their walls. There's a lot of powerful imagery in this. Many times do you see or hear the atrocities right outside their house, but it is contrasted by the family being so numb to the sounds that they don't even acknowledge it or shut it out completely. And it's in this denial of even acknowledging it that Glazer is able to get his point across. Because for the majority of the movie, we follow the family for being the symbol of the ideal nuclear family, while they downplay exactly what put them in that position in the first place. And the film really shows you that objective viewpoint of the family. They use multiple cameras, and a lot of them were just set up on a wall or not moving, so they never got any close-ups, and rather showing off the house and the family in wide, often locked-down points of view. This gives the movie its unique omnipresent feeling, and the use of sound design is definitely the highlight of the film. The movie almost always operates with the low hum or rumble that you as a viewer is conditioned to perceive as normal, This story felt like a very powerful one to be told. Not necessarily my favorite film of 2023, but this is definitely a very important one to watch, and I can see being an important one down movie history. Number 5, Past Lives. Even though I watched this on an airplane, I can proudly say that this movie almost had me ugly crying in the middle of the flight. Celine Song's directorial debut tells a story that's so intimate and so personal that I almost felt uncomfortable being a part of this. And I don't mean that negatively, this is just something that felt so real, and that you could feel that this was a very therapeutic act for Song to tell. I love that the characters aren't acting irrational or in any way that one would assume based off the premise. There are no cliches, only realistic and human interactions between two people not quite in love and not quite sure what they're feeling as they process through these emotions across the span of 24 years. A very mature way of looking at the what ifs in life, and I love learning about the Inyan and the way that superstition plays into the story. But the saddest thing about Past Lives is realizing that the white man wins. I'm sorry, that was a joke. Don't cancel me. Number 4. The Holdovers. The Holdovers at number 4 is solely based on its rewatchability. The movie knows that it's trying to evoke that nostalgic feeling of those classic prep school movies like Dead Poet Society or Rushmore, and it works so well, which is even more surprising because this could have gone down the wrong path and become a self-parody, but this movie has enough tongue-in-cheek references and winking at the audience moments that you can't help but appreciate it. Paul Muad'Dib Giamatti is so fun as the cranky teacher and is able to give depth to what could have been a very basic role. The other main characters include newcomer Dominic Sessa and the most likely Best Supporting Actress winner, Divine Joy Randolph. For this being Sessa's first film role, he absolutely nails the entitled rich kid, but also rides the line between likable and asshole, and does just enough to favor in the former. Divine Joy Randolph is the real heart of the story. Her character is asked to go through a lot during the film, and she portrays her grief with so much sincerity. This movie really tries to tug on your heartstrings, and all combinations of the main trio make for really great and deeply emotional scenes. I can definitely see this being a classic in the future. Great job. Number 3. Oppenheimer. What's left to say about Oppenheimer? I mean, it's the movie of the year. It's the point of Oscar season where everyone kind of just knows what's winning and we have to wait patiently for the very obvious results. Not to hold anything against this film, but the Oscars race just isn't something that people are kept guessing, at least this year. Oppenheimer is a massive film, both critically and commercially. It has an all-star cast that is one of the coolest combinations of actors ever. Cillian finally gets his shining star moment after working with Nolan for so many years. Robert Downey Jr. is able to break out of the Iron Man mold, and just about everyone in this has a moment to shine their acting chops in this massive movie with many stars. The pacing and editing, especially on repeated viewing, is something to be aware of because I thought the movie flowed so quickly through those first 2 hours and takes a drastic shift in the third that I've actually grown to appreciate. Lastly, I want to talk about the score because, I mean, you hear it on TikTok all the time. This is definitely Ludwig's best, and it's so cool to see him grow from producing Childish Gambino albums to becoming one of Hollywood's next great composers. I'm just gonna give Chris Nolan a preemptive gold star for this. Great job. Too bad you're third place in my books. Number 2, Poor Things. So in making this video, Poor Things was actually the very last movie that I watched this week. Not intentionally, but it just so happened to be last. And I didn't know where this would actually end up on my top 10 list, but this movie is really great. Definitely one of the best of the year. Yorgos Lanthimos found a perfect balance, I think, of his style and the way he views the world with what is his most commercial and approachable film. Although this might also be his most creative and bold film to date, I think the subject matter and his perspective on that is something that begs attention. A complete rejection and critique at the cycles of humans and the societal structures that we're put into and expected to fit in. There's just so many layers and perspectives that you can examine this story at. This is definitely something that would spark discussion over time. And another thing that's great about this movie is that I never felt stressed while watching it. I don't know if that's a weird sign, but I just felt that Bella's aura and general approach to the world of always experiencing and never fearing is something that draws the viewer to her, much like the men in the film. There's just a lot to take in, and I loved being in this very intricate and strange world that Yorgos is able to immerse us in. I hope that the production and costume design teams get some award recognition this Sunday, because their work is amazing, and it's really great to see all the little details that add so much depth to this very great story. I already want to rewatch this. This is how good it was. And number 1 of 2024, my personal pick, Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, although this film has no chance at competing with the absolute monster of a film in Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon is my personal favorite of the year. And that's all because I'm a Scorsese fan down to my core. I mean, the fact this is coming from someone who is as old as my grandpa and feels so energetic and inventive in the way that is filmed just reminds me that filmmaking is a medium to master, not just to use. I love the performances from DiCaprio and De Niro, and finally seeing Scorsese's artistic muses in a film together is something that many film fans have dreamt of since that weird commercial of them in 2015.
Are we finally getting to work on a project together? Is that what's going on here?
Well, technically no.
But the standout of the film and the emotional center point is Lily Gladstone. She fits into the role of Molly so well, and you can just feel the weight and emotional burden on her in her performance. Other aspects of the film that I love is the production design. Jack Fist, who's known for his work with Terrence Malick and in PTA films, built the town of Fairfax, and the introduction scene with Leo entering the town through train, getting off, and seeing this Wild West, like new frontier, it was just masterful. There's a liveliness to the town, and the use of extras and set decorations just fill in the movie and transports you into the world of the story. Rodrigo Prieto, the DP of not just this, but also Barbie, which is actually really crazy to think about. You shot 2 Best Picture nominees. I mean, even if he doesn't win any awards tonight, like, that's just an accomplishment in of itself. He shot this film beautifully across many formats, from film, digital, and black and white, and they all flow together so smoothly and creates a very unique and beautiful look to this movie. And finally, I want to recognize Thelma Schoonmaker, because her editing style and the way that she is able to convey Scorsese's vision all through both of their careers is something that should be studied. Her work here is masterful. She makes this 3.5-hour movie flow so well that you feel like every scene is important and there's no time wasted in this huge and important story. Honestly, I wish this stood a chance against any of these films, but can realistically only see Lily Gladstone winning. But that's okay. Award shows are arbitrary anyways, and so is my list. And if you disagree or have your own rankings of these 10 films, comment down below and tell me what your favorites are out of the bunch. I'd love to hear from you guys again. Thank you guys so much for sticking around, and I'll see you guys at the Oscars.